I'm Jan Masoka from the California Association of Nonprofits, Cal Nonprofits, and we're very happy to be co-hosting today's Nonprofit Town Hall with Assembly Member Jordan Cunningham. So just to make just a couple of a minute or two of some opening comments, you know, today nonprofits are more visible and more crucial than we ever have been. Every time you turn on the news or open the newspaper or open Twitter, you're going to see information about hospitals, health clinics, Meals on Wheels, food banks, centers for children with disabilities, everybody really stepping up and working hard to serve the community during this COVID-19 crisis. At the same time, we have all of our nonprofit theaters, museums, community music schools, and others are completely shut down. So nonprofits are being affected as our communities are being affected. And so it's really great that we have this chance. So we're very happy to be working today with State Assembly Member Jordan Cunningham, who represents both San Luis Obispo County as well as parts of Santa Barbara County. And then because so much activity right now is based on the county level in terms of COVID relief for nonprofits, we're really glad to have Supervisor Steve Lavanino from Santa Barbara County and Supervisor Debbie Arnold from San Luis Obispo County. And you know, just last week, Friday of last week, I think it was, I was quote unquote spoke at the Spokes event, which is the Alliance of Nonprofits in San Luis Obispo, and that was a great chance to sort of quasi attend their annual award ceremony. So I want to introduce Assembly Member Jordan Cunningham briefly before he talks, but just to let you know, we also have on the call our Policy Director, Lucy Salcido Carter, and we also have someone from the nonprofit community, Teresa Tardif, who's the Executive Director of CASA in San Luis Obispo, and she'll be telling us a little bit too about what it looks like on the ground level for nonprofits today. So just to mention something about Assembly Member Jordan Cunningham, he represents the 35th Assembly District. He's a native son. He was born in San Luis Obispo, and he has a very strong track record on public safety, healthcare, and the environment. But the interesting thing about him, it's the most relevant to today's audience of nonprofits, is that he's also publicly announced that he is donating 10% of his salary to nonprofit organizations in the community. So I don't know, that makes him a hero in my book. I don't know. Of course, we would have been happier with 10% Assembly member. I mean, with, you know, we'll say 100%, but I guess we'll settle for 10%. So let us know, just one last thing. So a town hall, just like an in-person town hall, it gives us nonprofits a chance to hear directly what our elected officials are doing and thinking and saying. And it also gives them a chance to hear directly from nonprofits, what we're experiencing and what we need. So it's two-way street. So please, we have more than 40 questions that were submitted in advance, but you can also use the chat box at the bottom of your screen or the Q&A box on the screen to let us know what your additional questions and comments are. Okay, so Assemblyman, tell us why you decided to make those donations and what response you've gotten to that, and what should all of us nonprofits know about what's going on in Sacramento right now?
Well, thank you, Jan. Thank you, Lucy, for joining us. Thank you, Supervisor Lavanino, Supervisor Arnold. I think she's having some technical difficulties, but she'll be joining us soon. I appreciate you guys putting this on, and thank you for everybody that signed up. I hope this is very informative, and I'll attempt to be rather direct, at least for a politician, and give you some useful information about the nonprofit world and what we've been doing at the state level and the county level to support our nonprofits in this critical time. The 10% donation figure was basically it was announced that a certain segment of state workers would be getting a 10% pay cut. It didn't feel right having my staff who's working quite hard during all this, helping people with EDD benefits and DMV issues and all the other things that have come as a consequence of this pandemic. I didn't feel right having them take a pay cut and with me not taking a pay cut. Our salaries are set by a commission and they decided not to lower them. So I figured it'd be a nice thing to do. I mean, I will say I learned this though, if you're gonna donate 10% of your salary to nonprofits, you should probably tell your wife before she reads about it in the newspaper, because she found out in news, but yeah, she's supportive, and we're happy to help out. Happy to help out. This month's Slow Leaf, the Law Enforcement Assistance Foundation, received our donation last month. This month, we're going to announce, I think tomorrow, it'll be the Santa Barbara Food Bank. So again, happy to help. You know, this pandemic and this crisis has shown us in stark relief the critical importance of our nonprofits to our community, whether it's food banks, domestic violence shelters, homeless services, you name it. Unfortunately, as mentioned, you know, our arts and theater world, our youth sports, you know, those are part of our nonprofit ecosystem too. They're in a bit of a stall pattern right now. We're hoping that, you know, as things abate on the public health crisis, we can start getting those things reopened, especially for our kids. And I want to thank CASA as well. You know, thank you, Teresa, for joining us. I've been a longtime supporter of CASA. They do wonderful, wonderful work for the most needy kids in our community, and they also throw a pretty nice little shindig of a fundraising dinner every year that my wife and I love to attend. Back when we could, like, you know, go to events in person, but we'll get there again one day. The legislature's done some work. We've had our bill package some way down. We've recessed twice due to the pandemic, which has been a little bit frustrating, but you know, you do want to maintain a functioning constitutional democracy despite what's going on in the world. But we've been working on some legislation that I've been happy to support. AB 2054 would enact a pilot program that would allow nonprofits in California to expand services during a declared emergency, get into things that maybe they are suited to do, but hasn't been their lane. So we can just sort of expand the safety net that nonprofits provide throughout the community. My colleague to the south, Monique Lamone, she carried AB 2213, which would require the Office of Emergency Services, which, by the way, during a crisis like this, has tremendous influence and power. It's an office that usually deals with wildfires, but now it's sort of become the de facto procurement agency for the state for medical equipment, and all sorts of other things are running through Cal OES. So it's very important that we make sure that they're serving the constituents well. They would have to, under this bill, develop model guidelines to identify and track community resources to assist local governments and nonprofits that are trying to deal with disasters and emergencies. The state recently announced that it's starting a new grant portal, a one-stop shop, if you will, online, which I think is great. And this is in reaction to a bill that was done in 2018. It's being implemented now, not a moment too soon, in my opinion. It used to be, if you're a nonprofit and you want to apply for a state grant, you got to go sort through 15 different websites, figure out where things are at. It is kind of a jumble. So this will make one portal where every nonprofit can go and see all the different state grants they can apply for. It should be pretty user-friendly, and I'm hopeful that, you know, once they work the bugs out, that's going to be a really good resource for people. As you probably know, the Ppp Loan Program was extended on the federal level through August 8th. So for folks that were able to get those loans to keep employees around, even if they have a revenue decline due to COVID-19 and the shutdowns, that is a helpful extension. The original legislation only gave you 60 days to prove up your payroll and your rent and the other qualifying expenses to have your grants relieved, or forgiven rather. This extended it another month, but that deadline's coming up. So if you've got a PPP loan program, if you got a PPP loan, contact your lender, because you've got 8 days, I guess. Yeah. So you know, get on top of that and make sure that you got all your paperwork in. You know, there's a lot of challenge going on. There's a lot of inspiring things going on. You know, I'm seeing unprecedented support for nonprofits. Happy to help with the modest donation, a part of my salary. You know, those of us that are in a position to do it, you know, now's the best time perhaps in my adult life to, you know, donate to your local nonprofit, you know, whether it be CASA, whether it be food bank, whether it be a domestic violence shelter. They're all seeing tremendous need, and every single Zoom call or phone call I'm on, you know, with nonprofits, they're telling me, you know, the demand for services and help has never been higher, and they've had they're being squeezed sometimes on the revenue side and the employee side. And so, the people that are there to help other people and need your support. So thank you, Jan, again. And that concludes my opening remarks. I'm looking forward to hearing from everybody else on this call. And hopefully we can provide some useful information for all of you.
Thanks so much for those comments. And, I especially appreciate your bringing up the new grants portal for nonprofits to search for grant opportunities. And we were the sponsor of that bill, we at Cal Nonprofits, and Monique Limon from Santa Barbara was the author of that bill. And we've put up in the chat box the web address for that so that people can use that afterwards. So thank you very much for bringing those points out. And I really appreciate your point about how people in vulnerable situations, like people with disabilities, low-income families, low-wage workers, people of color are more vulnerable than ever before, and so are the nonprofits that serve them and stand up for them. So this is really coming at an important time. Sorry, so you did touch on some federal things already, like the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program. Lucy Saucedo Carter, who's our policy director at Cal Nonprofits, has been tracking our federal stuff very closely as well as state things. So Lucy, can you just give a quick update and let nonprofits know what they should be doing right now about anything federal related?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Yes, thank you, Assemblymember, for mentioning the PPP. So, today is the 31st of July. So what's on everybody's minds, of course, is the supplemental unemployment payments from the CARES Act. But at the same time, people who already have the PPP are spending those funds down and worried about what's going to happen after that. So, and are focused on the forgiveness aspects of the PPP, frankly, and those are just as challenging as the application process was for many people. So if you haven't applied for the PPP, yes, please do. You've got one more week to do so. And if you are working on your forgiveness portion, there are resources through the SBA website. So folks are really concerned because the PPP is running down, and they're facing layoffs for staff, frankly. So one of the things that we're hoping to see in the next relief package is some additional PPP funding and a second round for folks who have gotten a first round. Another concern with the PPP is that some of the larger organizations have not been able to apply, and they are providing a lot of the essential services for communities. So, there's a hope that that the next round of PPP will include those larger nonprofits and some of the other 501c categories as well. So that's one issue, the PPP and some ongoing funding so that we can retain staff and keep doing the amazing work that we're doing. Another issue of concern for nonprofits at the federal level is around unemployment insurance reimbursement. So the CARES Act provides 50% reimbursement for the feds, but from the feds, which is great for self-insured nonprofits, but that remaining 50% is still quite a challenge for nonprofits that are self-insured. The HEALS Act, I think, lifts that amount to 75%. Nonprofits are hoping it'll go all the way up to 100%. So I know that there's a lot of negotiations happening around that. There's also a bill sitting on the president's desk for signing that would keep nonprofits from having to pay 100% of the unemployment insurance payments up front and then get reimbursed for the 50%. That outlay of cash is just next to impossible for nonprofits. So hopefully that'll get signed and become law. And I guess just the final thing quickly is that nonprofits are very concerned about the possibility of no new federal relief for state and local governments. We know that state and local budget cuts will have a huge impact on our communities and on our ability to serve our communities. So additional federal support for state and local governments would really increase access to funds for nonprofits so we can keep doing the amazing work we've been doing. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Jan. You're on mute. Jan, you're muted.
Yeah. Oh gosh, in future, like 100 years from now, they're going to be doing sitcoms about this, and people are going to be muted and trying to talk, right? Because that's the motif for our era, I think. We Account Nonprofits did have a webinar with representatives of the Small Business Administration last year on how to get your last week on how to get your PPP loan forgiven, and in the chat box we put the address to where you can see the recording of that for free. So thanks, Lucy, for that federal update. So we have two members from county boards of supervisors, and really happy to have such representatives here, because as these things have, there are just as many controversies and important decisions to be made right now for nonprofits at the county level as at the state level, certainly. And so we have two great folks with us today. One is Debbie Arnold. She is a county supervisor for San Luis Obispo County, and one is Steve Lavanino from Santa Barbara County. Santa Barbara County, and I believe maybe you have a little bit of a part of another county as well, I'm not sure. And I think, both of them have been doing a lot on COVID relief, but also they both come from counties that have been really especially badly hurt economically from the COVID-19 crisis. And even before that, both counties were really struggling with a number of really knotty, controversial issues in housing, for example, and environmental concerns. So I know the last thing you guys needed was another big thing on your plates. But so Debbie, can you just start by telling us what your county is thinking and doing about relief for nonprofits of all kinds? And you're muted, Supervisor Arnold, you're muted.
How's that? Is that okay? Thank you, Jan. And I want to thank Cal Nonprofits for providing the resources to nonprofits all over the state of California. Our county is particularly, I will say that we have a very strong relationship, and Teresa can testify to the fact that we have we depend on our nonprofits. In other words, a lot of the functions of the county, we partner, we work with grants, we spend a good portion of our budget supporting our nonprofits. So this has been really difficult all the way around for us. I had just looked it up. I knew that per capita we had a lot of nonprofits, as does Santa Barbara County in San Luis Obispo, but according to Tax Exempt World that provides information on charities and nonprofits, we have over 2,800 nonprofits here in the county. I wouldn't be surprised if there are more. These were actually updated in March, but with assets in our county of over $1.5 billion, $1.5 billion, and income in ordinary times of over $835 million. So that is kind of a overview of what the nonprofits do or how important they are to the county. Now, we know these are not ordinary times, and Assemblymember Cunningham talked about the nonprofits here in this county. We are a county of nonprofit fundraisers, and we enjoy them and we support them, and it's just been a fantastic partnership until now, when these fundraisers have been canceled one after another and leaving a lot of our nonprofits with really their major funding source just kind of evaporated with no warning. So the county is trying to pick up the ball on that. I want you to know that our county budget that we just passed, they're estimating, that's a big estimate, but a big gap, $32 to $56 million deficit. So that being said, where that gap comes from, a lot of our county budget goes towards supporting these nonprofits that in turn help us do our work and provide our services. Of course, we rely on the 1991-2011 Realignment Funds. We use it for health and human services here in the county and also for public protection programs. But we know that those funds are funded by sales tax, vehicle license fee, all collected by the state and then allocated to the counties to fund responsibilities that the state has realigned to the county. So currently we had budgeted almost $82 million, and Whether we'll get close to that, or we just don't know, and we're in the same boat as everybody else. Prop 172 is a significant funding source for our fire, sheriff, district attorney, and probation. We all know that's dependent on the half-cent sales tax, again, collected by the state and allocated to the cities and counties. We had budgeted over $27 million. So you can see where I'm going with this. Our Mental Health Services Act, again, the 1% sales tax imposed on millionaires, we had budgeted almost $17 million. Gas tax, we had budgeted almost $20 million. The county depends on a lot of state and federal grants, and then in turn help working with our nonprofits to fund them. All these things are we have so many unknowns now, and with increased caseloads like everyone else, that right now we're really depending on the state CARES Act funding to our county to pay for a lot and try to fill in a lot of these gaps. Now, due to our population, which is under 500,000 people, we don't receive the CARES Act funding from the federal government directly, and it goes through the state. So we are still waiting on ours. It's about a $29 million check that we're hoping will arrive any day. And but that all being said, we're doing the best we can. We just in June provided $2.7 million to ECHO, 5 cities, Capsule, and the Salvation Army, and particularly targeting our homeless and our housing support here in the county. So like everybody else, we are just hoping that we can knit all this together and keep our nonprofits functioning. It's a very important part of San Luis Obispo County.
So Supervisor Arnold, is there one place that people who are not having trouble getting information about relief from the county, is there one place you could suggest would be a good first place for them to call?
Yes. So the county has an excellent website up. It's readyslo.org. The word ready, SLO.org. Packed with information. And then, of course, contact numbers if it's hard on a particular issue to navigate that. But the county is really ready to be support to our nonprofits, and that's the best place to start.
Thanks very much. So Supervisor Lamanino, what are you doing in Santa Barbara County?
First off, I want to say thanks for putting this together. This is going to be really helpful, especially I'm reading some of the chat questions there as well, and it's really good to get a two-way conversation going. And first off, I want to announce that I want to also donate 10% of Jordan's salary to your nonprofits. So we've now kicked that up to 20%. So his wife's going to love that. So,
thanks, Steve. You can talk to my wife about that.
Yeah, okay. So Santa Barbara County's got a long history with a lot of nonprofits. And, when we talk about our wives, my wife's shocked at how many fundraisers we go to on a weekly basis here in the Santa Maria area. It's a very giving community. We always talk about the county being the social safety net for the community, but the real fabric of that net are our nonprofits, because a lot of our community, especially the area that I represent, which is Santa Maria, maybe not, they might be a little bit hesitant to work directly with their government agencies. They're much more comfortable dealing with somebody that's from their community, that's from a nonprofit. That trusted person, that friend, that is able to embrace them. They know that they're there to help, whether it's a food bank or CASA, whoever it is, Boys and Girls Club, YMCA. They're all out there. They know, they're helpful without the government kind of intrusion that they're a little bit worried about. So, in kind of piggyback on what Debbie was talking about, the financial part of it, we were in a little bit better position. So Santa Barbara County did not lay off any employees. Financially, we were able to meet our budget this year without any layoffs or cutbacks. Big shout out to my colleagues from previous boards that were fiscally responsible. And we have a few new controversial revenue streams that we won't talk about today, but they have provided us the ability to continue to provide the services that our citizens are used to. And so I don't see us cutting back any in the near future as far as where it comes to nonprofits. I think we're going to be a status quo, or maybe even a little bit, we'll be able to do a little bit more. We've also got our website, which is readysbc.org. It's been a valuable resource. It's what I really like about it, like you were talking about with the grant program, instead of our businesses and our citizens searching 20 different websites and 800 numbers, this one-stop shop, whether you're a business owner and you want COVID regulations or what you're allowed to do, or a myriad of other questions, you can go right there, and all things COVID, all things county related, whether it's public health or your business, can get answered for you right there. One message I want to get out there too is for the nonprofits and those working in those industries to take care of yourself. A lot of times people get into this work because they're a giving personality. They want to help their community, which is all great. But what I'm seeing a lot of, whether it's county employees that are part of this emergency response, or people in the nonprofit community, is burnout. And that can really get to you. And for me, the burnout is, I've been on the board for 10 years, and I pride myself in either having the answer that somebody's asking me for, or being able to find the answer. And the hard part about this crisis is I can't find good answers for people. And whether that's at the federal level, at the state level, or even our local level, whether it's a public health question, it just seems like decisions are made without a lot of data. Data is questioned. It's just a very confusing time. And I know people are getting frustrated. I am. And so I just encourage people that are out there that are working in the community. Yes, we do need you helping, but we need you at your best. And that is also taking time for yourself. And, what do they say on an airplane? They always say, put the mask on yourself first, and then you can help somebody else. So again, I want to thank Jordan and Cal Nonprofits for putting this together. And I'm very interested to hear feedback. I see a lot of folks in our chat box that I recognize. And I also want to give a shout out to Debbie, because Santa Barbara County has actually partnered with San Luis Obispo County for hospital overflow. And I think one of the things in this crisis that we've learned is we need to be more regionally, we have a regional eye on some of our problems so that we don't get so myopic about our own district or our own county. We have to look at these things. A virus doesn't respect a city or a county boundary line. So I think that's some good that's come out of it. So I really want to give a shout out to San Luis Obispo County. And with that, I will listen and get some feedback.
Thanks, Steve. Well, before we hear from Teresa at CASA, and we do have a couple of questions, both advanced and then today also, that I'm hoping some of you can speak to. So there's been a lot of discussion about health, but what about mental health? What kinds of supports are there, county and state, to help people with mental health concerns and with for the nonprofits that serve them? Speaking of burnout.
Yeah, I can take a crack at answering that, and then maybe Debbie or Steve could fill in what I leave out. Mental health services are critically important even in normal times, and in times like this, they're more than critically important. And I mean, we're seeing, they've been studying this since the Great Depression, and rampant high unemployment leads to some pretty negative health consequences of its own. And we're starting to see the effects of that. Domestic violence is up, teen suicides are up, child abuse reporting is down because the kids aren't in school. That's not good. These are the first, the mandatory reporters aren't seeing that and saying something to the authorities. And mental health consequences that flow from, these are uncertain, scary times for people, especially, there's fear of the virus, there's fear of unemployment, there's fear of, if you are unemployed or laid off or furloughed, how do I make ends meet? My office has helped over 3,000 people, and that's a lot of people. over 3,000 people clear up issues they're having with EDD, which is a state agency that's completely broken, needs to be overhauled from the ground up. Because of the price tag of mental health services, a lot of it, is funded through the county level. But some of the funding comes from the state, some comes from the federal government. Transitions does a lot of good work in San Luis Obispo County. And one thing I'd ask you guys to do to help us augment that capacity, write to our Congressman Salud Carbajal, write to the congressional leadership. The first CARES Act, the money that was set aside for counties to be able to fund things like mental health and other types of needs. That, as Debbie mentioned, there was a rather arbitrary threshold. If you were under 500,000 people in county, which includes it's both Santa Barbara and San Luis Obispo, there was not a direct pass-through from the federal government to the county. It went to the state, and we're still waiting for the money in San Luis Obispo, and that's a big chunk of change. So when they do CARES 3 or whatever they're calling it, that they're trying to negotiate now, I think I would strongly encourage you to implore, as I have, our federal leadership to eliminate that the 500,000 person requirement and do a direct pass through the money, so we get it quicker and then we can put it to use for helping people, through county mental health, through transitions, and through our other organizations that work on mental health. Big needs out there, and the quicker we can get those dollars from the federal government, and I don't know how they came up with the 500,000. I hope, I don't want to be a cynic, but are they assuming that if your county is under 500,000, like county government has no idea what to do, so they need the state to hold on to the money while they figure out whether you're doing? I mean, Santa Barbara County and San Luis Obispo County, in terms of COVID response, I think have been exemplary through this crisis. I mean, we're ahead of a lot of other counties, especially some of the bigger counties, LA County, Riverside County, in terms of augmenting our healthcare capacity, augmenting our support systems for people in need. So, just, give us a little trust, just pass the money straight through, we'll put it to work. And we need to boost mental health funding, in my opinion, overall across the board, both for this crisis and going into the future.
That's great.
Dan, go ahead, Steve.
Oh, thanks, Debbie. I'll just talk about two different things that we've done that, sometimes crisis can be a blessing in disguise. It makes you think differently about the way you do things. And two of those things that we've been doing are dual response, sending out more mental health officers with mental health professionals with our sheriff's department, co-response, so that when a lot of times we don't need actually a sheriff there, we need more of a mental health professional to deal with folks. And the other thing is we've, there was the Stepping Up initiative, which was trying to get more mentally ill folks out of the jail. Our sheriff, Bill Brown, has been a statewide leader in that. But with COVID, it really ramped up the process. And we've done, I think, an outstanding job now of really trying to ascertain what's the best way to deal with this person. Is putting them in jail when they're suffering from mental illness the best thing for them or the best thing for the county? And it's not, so we've actually dropped our jail population by almost half. A large percentage of that are folks that are mentally ill that we're, dealing with in other ways. And so I said, I think some of this crisis is leading us to do things that we wouldn't normally do. And we're finding out whether they work or they don't work. And I guess time will be the judge of that.
Thanks. Supervisor Owens, do you want to chip in on this?
Yes, please. Thank you. I just want to say that we actually have increased our mental health services in San Luis Obispo County over the last 2 or 3 years. We have a mental health unit at our county jail now. We have embedded mental health professionals in our emergency rooms countywide. That had become a problem where the emergency rooms really couldn't handle or didn't have the resources to handle the mental health cases that were coming into the emergency room. So we've done a lot, and it's my understanding in talking to our health department folks that they're not so worried about right now maintaining the funding because they're working off funding and grants that have already been, they're already in the pipeline. But I think we need to be a little bit careful about ensuring that in the future, a year from now, that we have these resources up and running and that funding, we can maintain the funding and the funding continues. So I think we will need to be talking to our congressional leaders and making that known when these grants and these funding avenues that we're working off of now are end, we need to be sure there's something to replace those.
Thanks. So we have today Teresa Tardif from CASA, Court Appointed Special Advocates from San Luis Obispo. So Teresa, what are you seeing in your organization right now?
Sure. Thank you, Assemblymember Cunningham, for inviting me, and for Cal Nonprofits for putting this together. Our model is based on a community volunteer who's screened and trained and is assigned by a judge to be an advocate for the best interests of a child or youth or young adult who's been abused or neglected. And they act as the eyes and ears of the court and provide a written report every 6 months to the judge, making recommendations. So of course, a challenge to begin with our program is, what was based on a personal weekly face-to-face relationship is now changed, and for many of our volunteers, and they're seeing them remotely. The need for the CASA volunteers not change, and in fact may be greater, because these are children who've been removed from their homes. These are young adults who did not reunify with somebody and are living independently, and so this connection is huge for them. And I have to say, I'm very proud. We have a staff of 14, and the way our organization was able to mobilize immediately in March at the time of the sheltering in place order. We're fortunately have a tech company that supported us for a long time, and everybody was able to start working remotely. Our volunteers are just smart, flexible people, and have really found ways to continue to support these kids remotely. The kinds of things we saw happening immediately was, for example, a young man was really, as volunteer and communicating with him, really realized that he was terrified of getting the virus. And, she provided him with reassurance, help with personal protective equipment. And they went and picked up his computer at the school and were able to help him make that transition. These kinds of things can be huge for a child who, foster homes are wonderful, but they're, offering something different, and the child doesn't always communicate fully with them. And so with these established relationships, that's, been huge. Another challenge has been, we continue to need new volunteers. We've been able to train them. Our trainer did a great job transitioning us to all no in-person training and doing it through Zoom conferencing. And I think we all know how challenging that can be. And we really were able, our first class to graduate during COVID, were assigned to 21 kids. So, that can make a big difference. And we're really seeing that children have responded really well, even though, they may be seeing them through the window at their placement or communicating through FaceTime or Zoom. They're really able to provide support. So our challenges beyond, with our court, our judge, Judge Crandall in the juvenile court, he didn't ever close down, as we've seen in a lot of other counties. So our volunteers were able to continue to represent their kids in court, to be there to speak on their behalf. They were done with Zoom conferencing. And, we have been concerned some about our ability to retain volunteers with this different model. But, we feel that we're seeing some real enthusiasm for our volunteers kind of appearing in court this way. Judges always welcomed their input, but here on Zoom, you know, he's actually asking them, you know, they don't have to raise their hand. He's including them. And they also, our courtrooms are not always that easy to hear in for, you know, the volunteer who's seated in the gallery area, and they feel really included in really knowing what's going on.
Oh, Teresa, you know, we're in the middle of a study of a survey. We have about 950 nonprofits that responded so far. And one of the things is about 30% of them are seeing that they're having drops in volunteers, but it doesn't sound like that's happening to you. Is that right?
I think that that's right. Right now for our next class, which is not till September, I think we already have 20 people signed up, and our classes typically are 12 to 15. So we're seeing a really good response to that. And we're, you know, our staff do, you know, very detailed interviews beforehand. So it's not that we're getting, oh, Melanie from our trainer says we have over 30 signed up. So I think we're going to actually be doing 2 trainings back to back. And
that's good to hear.
Yeah, we're really pleased. And we're also seeing that these aren't people who are just, they have some free time and they're doing it. You know, we interview them to see that they're ready to make a long-term commitment. So we don't want to create any extra loss for these children who've lost so much. Our biggest challenge are the financial ones. We canceled our March fundraiser, and we did, our event planner was able to really quickly put together an online auction, but it's, you know, hard to meet the results of the in-person fundraiser, which we depend on for about a quarter of our budget. And now our September fundraiser that's here in the South County is also canceled, and well, not canceled, it's becoming a virtual fundraiser. So I urge all of you to attend if you can. It's October 23rd. slowcasa.org is our website. That we were able to get the Ppp loan, and we found that local donors really called us, realizing even before we were reaching out that we're going to be struggling. Must Charities called us maybe at the first or second day of sheltering in place, and they purchased Zoom, private business Zoom account, but so that each of our staff could have their own, which was huge. The Community Foundation. And then OES, as was mentioned, have been really helpful. We were able to get VOCA funding to provide us with some of the screens, things to help us.
Thanks. It's really great to hear that how your organization, your staff, and your volunteers working with the court are really making a difference in children's lives. So thanks for sharing those stories with us. Now I want to go to, we have many questions on both live and were submitted in advance, so I want to ask a number of them. Several questions are related to the performing arts, right? They can't have ticket sales, they can't have rehearsals with no opening in sight. So I know in particular the state has really worked on these issues of supporting arts organizations, but Assemblymember Cunningham, what should arts organizations be thinking right now?
Well, we're sort of waiting for guidance from the State Department of Public Health for both youth sports and also performing arts. We would like to see it not tied to the county watch list issue. You know, I sent a letter to the governor June 16th imploring him to issue guidance for youth athletics. You know, so I've coached all my 4 kids in sports. You know, it's profoundly important for kids to have that kind of outlet. You know, a lot of kids are just kind of basically sitting around playing video games, or they're on TikTok or on YouTube all day or whatever. I mean, that's not great. I'm hopeful we're going to see some progress soon. I've heard some rumors that the State Department of Public Health may be close to issuing some revised guidance. We'll see what that says. You know, the evidence is pretty strong that, you know, as long as you sort of distance kids and have the right safety health protocols in place, and if you're in an outdoor environment, there's very little risk. And of course, parents that aren't comfortable with that, cannot do it. I hope to have some good news. I think the indoor stuff's going to take longer, frankly, just because of the concern around transmission of virus through, singing and close in indoor circulated air and so forth. But we're working on it. It's our local county, at the county level, our county public health director's hands are tied currently. We're all in a holding pattern, and this includes high school sports and CIF. And drama through, my oldest daughter's very active in drama, that we're all kind of in a holding pattern to see what the State Department of Public Health issues. But it's an issue of personal and policy importance to me. So I will continue to beat the drum and see what we can get in the way of guidance that can allow our kids to get back to those really, really critical activities.
Mm-hmm. Great. We also have a couple of questions, which is, how are all of you seeing tourism as related to the virus and to funds for nonprofit organizations? Because tourism is such an important factor for the income in both counties. Any thoughts about how should nonprofits be understanding the impact of tourism?
Well, it's interesting because that is one of our funding sources, of course, is the TOT and just Santa Barbara County in general having tourists come. The strange thing is, we're also having to balance what does that mean. So we've had the argument here of whether or not to close our beaches, because the problem is if one county's rules are different than another county's rules, everybody wants to go to the beach. If LA's are closed and Ventura's closed, we're the next closest beach. It's a real balancing act. You get folks coming from different areas that have different rules. They come out here where we might be a little more strict as far as masks go and distancing. They're not used to that. They don't want that. Unfortunately, they don't have a beach in their Central Valley. So they want to come to ours. And so I think we see a lot of that. The whole tourism thing is really strange because we rely on it, but at the same time, we're trying to get people not to visit too much. But like my wife and I, we just celebrated our anniversary. We felt we had to do something. And so you do your little staycation, right? So we went down into Ventura County. Sorry, Debbie, we probably should have come up to see you guys, but
what were you thinking there, Steve?
I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking, but so I think you're going to see
next year if you come on
yeah,
up to.
I think you're going to see more of that, of local people accessing local hotels and those types of things. I'm not sure people still feel safe about getting out and getting on a plane and having, drawing people in from other parts.
Yeah, great, thanks. We also have a number of questions about small organizations, especially all volunteer organizations. So, they're not eligible for PPP because they don't have employees and they don't get government contracts, which support so much of our health and human services sector. And what advice do all or any of you have for all volunteer organizations that are nonetheless, many of them, like youth sports leagues, for example, are critically important. There are lots of various different kinds of all volunteer organizations. They're a little bit under the radar sometimes of the policy screen, but what advice do people have for those organizations right now?
I've got a practical thought on that. Our kids do soccer and most of their sports through the Templeton Community Services District. They've been hit really hard. They've got, I think, 2 employees and everybody else is volunteer. Obviously, people who do AYSO soccer, that's an all volunteer organization. What we've sort of been encouraging them to do is, there are things like day camps that are allowed even under the existing public health guidance from the state. They're not probably what you're used to. There's some parameters, but my 12-year-old did one a couple weeks ago. It was a week-long soccer thing, 8:30 to 12. They didn't allow scrimmaging, but they allowed pretty much everything else. And we're kind of encouraging our volunteer organizations, work with your county public health director and figure out if you can structure some sort of program under the heading of a day camp, or it doesn't have to be one day, it can be a day camp, it just has to meet that definition. You can offer something to the people, and there are a lot of folks out there that would probably pay quadruple or 10 times or 20% of Steve Lavanino's salary, for example, to have their kids be able to do something outside and do something in a day camp structure. And the existing public health guidance does allow for it if you're careful about it and you structure it. So I would say my best piece of advice probably is, to interface with your public health county officer, figure out what you can do under the existing guidance, and then, offer something up and then say, hey, we're going to charge $100 for this camp, but we're really struggling and we need to get through this time. And we want to be there for you next year in 2021, when hopefully the world's a little more reopened and back to normal, or the new normal. Can you chip in another $100, or can you, and then you're offering something from the fundraising world, which, it feels like sometimes I spend half my life doing. You're always better off offering something to people and then asking them that, to extend their generosity. And I think that's a model I think could be helpful, at least on the youth activity side. And then I believe this would be probably somebody else could answer this question better than I could. But I believe there are some federal related programs people can apply for. And even if you don't have employees, for example, you can still get PUA unemployment if it's a matter of getting your personal finances through this time period. So if you need help with that, please reach out to my office. We'll see if we can help you.
And that reminds me that I want to remind everybody on this call today that, not only are the elected officials here showing their commitment to nonprofits by being here, but also their staff is on here too. So everybody's looking at the chat box and the Q&A box and learning a lot from it. And I think it's going to inform future policy, even if we don't get to your specific question. So, well, we're just
Can I chime in on something right there? I think that Jordan touched on real quick that I think is important is, if you are part of a nonprofit or a business or whatever, don't be afraid to have that relationship with public health. You need a contact, and if you don't have one and you're in Santa Barbara County, contact me. But getting that feedback from your public health office, if you're trying to hide from them or you don't want to reach out to them, I think that's a mistake. I think it's better to figure out how to get to a yes and find out that you are within the rules. There are some things that we can do, but you just kind of have to think outside the box, I think, like Jordan's saying. But get that relationship.
We have one more pressing question, I think, for a lot of people that have laid off staff, that their staff or their clients, the people they work with, are having a lot of trouble getting their unemployment benefits. And Assemblymember Cunningham, I know that this has been a matter of a lot of press, but what's going on with that? What needs to happen to move that unemployment benefits machine?
Yeah, so the state agency that's in charge of for lack of a better term, doling out unemployment benefits, which is largely funded by federally. And there was an augmentation that expires today, actually, of additional $600 a week for unemployment benefits. That state agency is called EDD. It was a mess even before this crisis, and now since the demand has gone up 10x for unemployment benefits, over 30,000 claims, for example, in my assembly district alone since March. It's turned into a complete disaster. There's no point in beating around the bush. EDD is completely broken. People are getting bounced out. We've got 100 open cases right now. My office is helping over 100 people who filed claims in March that still haven't been able to qualify. There's website issues. It kicks you out. You can't get anybody on the phone. So if you are in a situation or you have a friend or colleague, neighbor, whomever, that needs unemployment, you need to call my office, 805-549-3381. Or you can reach out on Facebook, Assemblyman Jordan Cunningham. Or you can email me, assemblymember.cunningham@asm.ca.gov. Phone call is probably best. Let us help you. We've got a playbook. We've resolved over 3,000, as I mentioned, over 3,000 unemployment issue claims. Don't be shy about it. These are insurance systems. They're funded through our payroll taxes, but employers and employees both. A lot of people are out of work due to no fault of their own. Public shutdown orders based on public health, thrown more people than ever in the history of our country into these programs. So reach out to us. We will help you. And on the state level, there's been a chorus of legislators fighting for an audit, fighting for the governor yesterday announced a task force to look at EDD, which is, about time. So we're pressing really, really hard because it's a technical problem. It's a resources problem, but we need to pretty much overhaul EDD from the ground up. So, we're going to keep pressing on that. But in the meantime, if you need help, again, call us 805-549-3381. Don't spend 100 hours waiting on the phone to get EDD on the phone. Like, that is not a good use of your time. And you will be so frustrated that you will want to beat your head into a wall. Reach out to us first. Let us help you. We've got the staff to do it, and we know how to do it.
And thank you very much for pointing out that the unemployment supplements are ending today. I think there are so many people, I think so many of us know people that, for example, they get $200 a week in unemployment, which they can't survive on, but with the $600 a week extra, they have been able to. So I think we're going to see just tremendous problems showing up. So especially with, in California, we know that 1 in every 14 California jobs is at a nonprofit. So we know that unemployment and economics are a big part of the employment of the nonprofit picture. So we're at the end of our time, but I'm just wondering if we could ask our 3 elected officials, starting with Debbie Arnold and Supervisor Lavanino, and then Assemblymember Cunningham, to share any last minute thoughts for us to take away as we go into the weekend. So Supervisor Arnold, can you start?
Yes. Dan, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. The screen changed on my deal. So I just want to say, again, I appreciate what you're doing to help support nonprofits statewide. And in our county, going back to some of the conversation we all had, we're just going to have to all do the best we can to support each other and try to work through this. But San Luis Obispo County is committed to protecting and working with our nonprofits so that when we come out of this on the other end, we can be the county we were pre-COVID and continue to support each other and do such, I know our nonprofits do such good work in the county. So thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, my advice is just don't give in to all the negativity that's out there. There's, it all is mushrooming up from frustration with lack of, we don't know what's happening. We don't know what's going to happen. It's a mystery. So you just realize that you're doing good work, and there's people out there that really depend on you. So like I said, take care of yourself. I get a lot of negative. We all do. We all get a lot of negative messaging right now. And my first response is, well, what are you doing to help? How do you see yourself being a piece of the answer? And so, you guys are already doing that. Appreciate it. And, keep your head up.
Thanks. Assemblyman?
Yeah, thank you. Well, remember this, if you're in the nonprofit world, when you help people in a time of desperate need, like they are facing right now, a lot of our folks in our community, they will never forget that ever, and the rest of their life. So, make sure that you keep that in mind. The work you're doing to help people in the community is more appreciated than it's ever been. And it's more important than it's ever been for a lot of people. I'd like to put in a plug. Cal Nonprofits, a lot of these bills I'm talking about, whether it's the One Stop Grant website, whether it's some of these other bills that we're working on together in the legislature, they would not happen without Cal Nonprofits. They're a single voice for nonprofits, and really the only single voice for nonprofits throughout our state. They're effective, they do great work, and I know times are tough, but if you haven't joined them, pay your nominal dues, sign up, because they are your voice in Sacramento, and they get things done for you. and that's important. You know, it's important to have an articulate advocate at the state level and at the federal level for you, and Cal Nonprofits serves that role at the state level, and they do it very, very well. You know, we are going to get through this. We have the best scientists in the world, and almost every one of the best scientists in the world, billions and upon billions of research going into vaccines and viral treatments. You know, we've learned a lot about this crisis. You know, we've learned a lot about the virus. You know, we're going to get on the other side. It's just a matter of, you know, surviving and staying positive, as Steve said, in the meantime. So, you know, I have no doubt about that. We will prevail. You know, humans throughout history have faced very, very, very difficult things. You know, I think back to what it must have been like to live in World War II, especially if you're in Europe, or, you know, through the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic. You know, we've faced things like this before, and we've always prevailed, and we're going to do it again. So thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for joining our conference, and thank you again, Jan, for hosting this.
Okay, thanks so much to everybody. We know you could have been having another latte or something, but joining us instead. So thank you, and thank you to so many participants, and everybody have a great weekend if you can.